All right, welcome back to the Agile MSP podcast. I'm the host, Wim Kirchhoff. I'm the founder of Top Left. So if you're running MSP, you already have enough tools, dashboards, queues, ticket lists, dispatch boards. But yet a lot of leadership teams struggle with some simple questions like what's stuck, who's overloaded, and what actually matters today. And so years ago, that sort of fog with looking at projects and service and what should we do next led me to create Kanban boards for ConnectWise. And we needed better clarity and better methods, which of course required a tool, but ultimately is what the methods, clarity, getting flow going. So today we're excited to dive straight into this topic with a world-class expert and book author, speaker. So Karen Martin runs TKMG, and she helps companies implement lean management. She's worked with Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, written several books, including Value Stream Mapping and Clarity First, which we'll probably touch on most today, and speaks at conferences all over the world. Lean started in manufacturing in 1950s, even earlier. Some people would say it's rooted back in before 2,500 years ago, some of the principles. But these work perfectly for service teams as well, dealing with backlogs, project bottlenecks, help desks, even sales and marketing. So Karen, I'm excited to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's a topic that is very applicable and I have a lot of passion for, so it's a good thing.
Love it. Yeah. So I guess we'll jump right into it. What does clarity mean to you at a leadership team, at a leadership level? And why is it so hard to get that in a growing company like an MSP?
Yeah. So clarity, let's start with the opposite, ambiguity. So ambiguity is that fog where you're not quite sure what the mission is or what you should be doing or whether you got the right information or what someone intended by an email or what they meant by a statement they made. That ambiguity, the opposite of that is clarity. So clarity has two components: coherence, it makes sense, and just that it's a truthful way of representing a thought, a feeling, a belief, an action, a decision. And so it's just getting all that muck, that fog out of the way so that the truth can emerge. And why is it so difficult? There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things in the way of clarity. And I thought writing a book on one topic was going to be super easy. And it turned out it was very difficult because clarity has so many different layers. And one of the most common reasons why people aren't more clear in communicating or they don't ask for clarity when someone communicates with them is fear. Fear of being reprimanded or ridiculed or looking dumb or whatever it might be. And so that's one of the core, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the core reasons why clarity is tough, because fear is more common than we would think.
Yeah, fear. And I love the acronym that one of my coaches gave me years ago, like false evidences appearing real.
Oh, that's
right?
Interesting. Yeah, that's good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this fog is a real thing. I think it's like a blanket that kind of weighs down, and you get some clarity. You do a vision day, whatever, and you lift it up, and it falls down again right away. So it needs a lot of intention to keep that fog lifted.
Yeah, it does. It takes effort. It takes more time to operate with clarity than not in the initial, but yet the aftermath of not having clarity is significant, and it creates significant organizational drag and interpersonal drag, and just it doesn't allow us to be as productive and helpful and move along and just do what we want to get done. And there's just muck that we have to get through when clarity is not present.
Yeah. So what does leading with clarity look like for, let's say, a 15-person MSP provider?
So one of the first things is being very, very clear on the purpose, the purpose of the organization. And it's not what you do that's the purpose. It's why you do it that's the purpose. And what outcomes you're seeking to achieve that would otherwise not be achieved if people didn't use that product, your service, or whatever it might be. So getting clear on that is not easy. I mean, it seems like it would be so easy. I remember interviewing this guy from a tire manufacturer, and I said, so what's the purpose of your company? Big one. And he said, make good tires. And I said, that sounds like a mission. Sounds like that's the product. Why are you making good tires? Why? Who cares? What difference does it make? And it took a minute for him to really get into, not more than a minute, I'm using that euphemistically, a lot more than a minute, for him to finally get to the point where the quality of the tires was in order to enable an emotional reaction. And an emotional reaction is feeling confident that your car is not going to get a flat, and you're not going to be left on the middle of a dirt road in the middle of the night, and not have anyone there to help with a flat tire, or you're going to wreck, have a car accident or whatever it might be. So there's always something deeper than the what that is the purpose and why an organization does it. So that's the first thing. And that's only one of many things. And there's 5 Ps.
Yeah. Yeah. Just what would this leader be doing day to day to keep that clarity there? Mm-hmm. Like, what are the daily habits?
Right. So actually, let me just mention the 5 Ps, and then I'll go one by one on the practical applications of it. Yeah. So there's purpose. Priorities is a very big one. Performance. A lot of times leaders don't even know how the organization is actually performing. Processes, the people doing the work don't always know exactly how they should be doing the work. And then problem solving. It's, sometimes it's all too common that people don't even know what problem they need to be solving. And so, it's a leader's job to first commit to the fact that clarity is maybe a good thing, and that being in the fog needs to be left in the past. And the organization needs to move into the realm of clarity. And by the way, clarity, there's a saying, the truth hurts. Clarity can be painful. If you're learning the truth about something and it's kind of like, embarrassing, or you just wish it wasn't true, then, that isn't necessarily like, oh, yay. Yeah. We have this situation, but it's so much better to confront it and be truthful about what it is and do something about it than to hide from it. So that's really important. So let's go back to priorities. So the leaders, one of the most important things that leaders can do at any size organization, by the way, is to have alignment across the leadership team on what are the priorities. This person might think that the priorities are blah, 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 and another leader might think it's blah, blah, blah. And that just creates nothing but chaos organizationally. So the leadership team itself needs to do that. And there's a process that was a Japanese-born thing back in the 50s that Toyota adopted, and it kind of got integrated into lean management through the Toyota involvement with TPM, Toyota Production Management, or TPS, Toyota Production System. And it's called strategy deployment. The Japanese terminology is Hoshinkanri. And it's a methodology that you do to get clear on what you really want to achieve as an organization in some sort of time period. And it's, we work with companies all the time in doing this. And, the leaders hardly ever agree in the beginning on what those things are that they should be achieving in a fiscal year or a quarter or a month or whatever it might be. And so it takes a while to get people focused on what they really want to be, which market they want to be in, which, in many cases is already defined, but which customers do you want to work with? Which customers do you not want to work with? You really shouldn't ever strive to be all things to all people, So it's getting leaders around, to all agree on that, so that all the decisions that they make, the decisions on how you're spending money and what products or services you're offering and all those things, you need to have agreement on it. So that clarity is important.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm just thinking on my back wall, I've got a book cover for Traction EOS. I don't know if you've heard of that system, but
I have. Yeah.
That's provided a lot of clarity on the purpose, the why, the what, ideal clients, how we sell, how we deliver, who reports to who, the metrics, all of that.
Yeah, and I'm going to pivot kind of all the way the other direction into the nitty-gritty details, into the weeds of daily work and a leader's role in helping people. So I learned this a long, long time ago. I was working with a construction firm, and I thought it was so clever. Someone in the middle of a conversation asked someone else, challenged another leader, and said, well, wait a minute. What do you mean by done? Is it done, undone, or done, done, done? And I was just like, oh, wow, that is really a good question. And I became a little obsessed from that point onward to this day about defining done. And so when leaders are giving, an assignment to someone or asking someone for help or whatever, it is vital that they agree on what done looks like. And I mean, I have it on my own team occasionally when I forget to be that clear about it, which, it takes a lot of work, like we said, to be clear. And so sometimes I even forget. And I'm pretty obsessed with clarity. And, and then I'll get something back and I'll like, ooh, that wasn't exactly what I was asking for. And it's like, was that person's problem or is it my problem that I wasn't clear? It doesn't, get someone off the hook from asking clarifying questions, so if someone doesn't understand for sure what it is, they should ask also, but it's more incumbent on the communicator to be clear to begin with and be aware that lack of clarity is a real thing. It's a common thing, and we have to fight against it every minute of every day. And it's not just at work, it's at home as well.
Yep. Lots there. I'm just thinking with my kids and wife. Yep. Huge clarity on how it's supposed to be done and what does done mean in the kitchen cleanup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It includes wiping the stove, cleaning out the sink, the garbage in the sink.
Yeah, even like making a bed. Does that mean the pillows are on the bed or can they be still on the floor? Does that mean the corners are hospital corners or could they be any kind of corners? What does making a bed mean? It's amazing how much. When you start getting a little obsessed about it, you'll start seeing it. There's not a lot of clarity in the beginning when you're first getting sensitized to it. Not a lot of clarity in many places.
Yeah, I just did the last hour. Every Thursday, we do our weekly group accelerator call with our clients. So basically coaching around these concepts. And that was one of the topics today was the definition of done.
Yeah, good.
And because a lot of people on the team, they have different definitions. So technician closes the ticket, thinks he's done based on the ticket, but you didn't do your time entry, you didn't do documentation, didn't update the monitoring system, you didn't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
Lots there.
Yeah, we just launched a new platform and the done thing's been really an interesting and common conversation because, for example, one thing that happened last week that carried over to today is that the launch went relatively well. There were very few, bugs that we had to work through. So that went really well. But we had a reporting system in place. And some of the code that is involved in this new platform conflicted with the original code, and no one thought to test that because they were testing the code, and they didn't think to test the reports. And so we go, my team, to pull down some reports that were kind of urgent. Done is a really big deal, and to be able to focus on it and talk about it a lot is important. And we're going through a situation here right now in our company where we launched a new platform, and for some reason I didn't think about it, the developers didn't think of it. We have a reporting platform that ties to the main platform, and the reports broke. The new code's genius, and it's a beautiful platform, but there were some connections with the old reporting system. And so we went to run reports, and they were kind of in an urgent situation, and they didn't work. And so I went back to the tech team. They're like, oh, we have to fix some things. And so they fixed some of the things. But then today I ran another report from the same reporting system, and it doesn't work fully. It's almost there. And I said, did you guys test it? And they said, well, we tested da-da-da. So, I didn't set the parameters for all the testing that should be done to declare it done. And so, it would have saved a lot of time and headache to have done that up front. So again, even I, as obsessed as I am with clarity, didn't think about the reporting module. It's constant battle, but the more you're aware of it, the more likely it is that clarity will be more the norm than not.
Yeah. Of course, our definition of done should have all those things, right? We shouldn't have three definitions. It should be one clear definition of done.
Correct.
Yeah.
And and the other thing is interesting when you look at things cross-functionally, you can have one person doing a task, and the task is done when they pass it on to the next person in their mind. But to the recipient further down the chain, it's nowhere near done. And so looking at that variation on what done means to different people and making sure everyone has that same definition at that place in the process is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if I read that in your book or in someone else's. It's like, let's say work hits like 3, 4, 5 people, is having a conversation where you go to the next person. Hey, what would it have been really nice to have in my work? Something like that. And it's fascinating. People are like, you never told me that? Like I could have easily changed. It would have been a small effort on my part, and it would have really helped you save a lot of time, right? And grief.
Yeah. we do mapping exercises with clients, it's really interesting how much of the time there's some kind of interpersonal or interdepartmental tension between people. And, most of the time it has nothing to do with the people or the personalities. It's because the work system isn't working as smoothly as it can and should be working. And it's mainly because of that lack of communication on when someone is doing work, what the recipient truly, truly needs to be able to do their work without any kind of delays and rework. And when you get in these mapping teams that are cross-functional and they start sharing that, it's amazing how this tension just melts away because they realize it had nothing to do with the people. It was all about the process just not being quite as clear and well documented and things like that as it could be. And I love that part of mapping. It's like healing those relationships is a really good thing.
Yeah. So this good segue into my next question around value stream mapping. So a lot of MSPs, like with the Kanban boards we set up, it's basically an expanded version of like to do, doing, done.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll call it backlog, call it a ready column. They're what they're started, what they're weighted or blocked on, and they call it Kanban. But why can that be a trap? And like, what's missing from a simple board like that?
Well, priorities for one thing.
Yep.
It's important that priorities be clear. Because again, different people will have different views of what is important. And so if you have, I call it the traffic cop. If you have the traffic cop at the beginning that's deciding what gets passed to moving from in queue to doing, and that person has a definitive voice for the whole organization, then great, that works. But oftentimes that person doesn't have the view of what the organizational needs are, and there's no internal process for anyone to clarify together which ones are the most important projects to do first, second, third. So that's one thing, is prioritization has to precede that queue going into or backlog going into the doing. And then the other thing is on the other end, the done thing is, becomes a really big deal, is understanding that, something could be viewed done by one person and not done by other people. And so making sure that we actually have two done columns on our board. So we've got like kind of a post QA, but we're still just fine tuning a couple things and making sure it's truly done before it really goes into done. And so you don't always need that, but in our case, for the kinds of projects we work on, we do. So that's another helpful clarifying step.
That's something that's quite common with the DevOps flow is development, various levels of QA, staging, production, and then a final check.
Yeah, because QA from a layperson perspective is QA from a developer perspective. So it's, you do have to have at least those two different. And then we're starting to do more and more testing within the development and not waiting for testing. And it's really helpful. It's tricky. You have to make sure the requirements are clear enough in the beginning to have it be a robust test. And so it's tricky, but boy, it's nice when you can get it built in up front. Saves a lot of time at the end.
Yeah, we do a lot there, and then everything goes through a peer review before it even really hits QA, right? Like just peer review on code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours not always.
No.
We strive. Peer review is really helpful, and people learn a lot through peer review.
Yeah. So yeah, when it comes to delegating work and passing it on, I get the whole thing of clarity, and I know often I haven't been clear enough, but now that kind of holds me back. I'm like, I don't want to let go of this task until I've broken it down and given clarity. To end up hoarding stuff. So it's kind of a balance, is to give people perfect clarity. I could spend all day writing requirements and lengthy emails. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's a delicate dance, right? So, I think as a leader, you should be constantly thinking about developing people, developing people, developing people, developing people. It needs to be the mantra. And so you have to figure out, how best to develop them as quickly as possible, but still give them the time that they need to truly absorb information and practice. I mean, practice is a big part of learning and habituating some new behavior. So they have to be given the time and the latitude to practice and to make mistakes in the beginning. And it's a lot faster for people that are highly skilled to do anything pretty much than someone who's just learning it. And so that patience thing comes into play. So I think I think when I'm giving a task to someone, I'm pretty good, I think, at saying, well, okay, let's talk through it again. Now, I've said what to do. You repeat back, or you tell me what you think it is, to make sure that I've covered all my bases, and you really do understand it the way I'm thinking I'm communicating it. And it's a great communication test, to see if you're really saying, like, your head may be clear, but the words that come out your
That's
mouth
right.
may not be, or they may be, and their filter's not hearing them clearly. So there's like a lot of things have to align for clear message received clearly, and so it's just asking for that confirmation, and can be really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, because they could say yes, and I'll do it, but they got 5% of it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just be nice, and their fear holds them back from
Yeah.
asking for clarity, right? Because they feel bad, or they feel like an idiot to ask for
Well, yeah,
clarity.
and a lot of bosses have punished people for asking clarifying questions. I mean, I tend to be a big question asker, and my first corporate boss did not like it. And for a while, she kind of beat me out of asking questions, and
Yeah.
I didn't like that. It felt terrible to not be able to clarify. My confidence went down. So when you hire someone, they have all this worldly experience coming into it before they come to you as a leader, and you're inheriting all of that, good, bad, ugly, right, wrong, indifferent. You're getting that person with all that worldly experience. And so that's another thing that's helpful to really, as a leader, to try to tap into that and understand what has been their leadership experience with other leaders, and how have they
Mm.
habituated their behavior based on leaders that behave very differently from how you behave as a leader. And just get that, kind of create that safe environment up front for them to behave differently than what they did before. I mean, I had that happen with a woman I was coaching, and she just kept resisting this one suggestion I kept making. And I learned that it was because she had a boss in a previous job that kind of punished her for doing what we were talking about her doing, which was just going to her peer group and asking an opinion about something. But she felt her current boss was going to behave like the former boss and not want her to, like, take that dirty laundry outside of their little work team. And then I suggested she talk with her current boss and find out if that's true. And she did, and he's like, "No, go ask them." Like that. I want us to be collaborating with other groups. And her other boss was very defensive and probably insecure. There's some fear there. Didn't want her to go out and tell other people what they were even working on. And so as a leader, you gotta always kind of keep that in the back of your mind and ask, so that you can learn more and
Yep.
give permission for people to ask questions.
Okay. Love that. Switching gears a little bit. So in manufacturing, waste is like inventory, defects, rework, those sorts of things. What are some common forms of waste in MSPs? So like just, as a service provider teams, when you start looking at it, or you map their service flow, like what are common wastes in kind of knowledge work and such?
There are many. There are as many as there are in manufacturing. So one of them has to do with clarity, and it is. I just want to be really clear for everyone to understand this. So we're not suggesting that people should stop asking clarifying questions. On the contrary, people should ask more clarifying questions. You want to design the process, the work environment, everything that person is experiencing as they're doing work, in a way where it's less likely they need to ask for clarity. So
Mm.
there's all kinds of different techniques you can use, like visual workplace, visual management. You can have clearer processes to begin with. You can have all kinds of visual cues that happen in automation and a computer system that can help people not have to ask questions. So you are trying to make it so that it's a questionless environment, but that's only because you don't need to. Again, not saying you shouldn't clarify. You absolutely should. So that's one thing. Another thing are approvals. So approvals, almost every approval will stop work. And when work is stopped, it's not flowing. And when it's not flowing, there's no way value is being delivered to a customer, because work sitting around is not adding value. And so it's really important to be able to, look at the work very systematically, and look at how work is being passed from place to place, and figure out how to codify the workflow in a way that doesn't put any additional organizational risk. That's why approvals are usually put in place. Well, we need to get approval so that this doesn't happen and that doesn't happen. Well, you still don't want this or that to happen, but you can do it in other ways. Like, you can codify approval levels, for example. Like sales teams, when sales teams are going out and selling something, if every single price has to be approved, that's one way to approach work, but it's always going to sit. And because no one's just sitting there going, I'm waiting for work to come in. I'm waiting for work to come in. I've got nothing to do. I'm watching videos, people are busy. So work sits. So you can codify it and say, in this condition, you do make this decision. In this condition, you make this decision. In this condition, it does have to come to me, and so you get, instead of one size fits all for approvals, you figure out the scenarios that and have different paths, and you document that those are the paths that can get more of the work flowing and have less of a queue. So that's a big one. And then rework is another big one. There's just a lot, and it comes mainly from lack of clarity, or mistakes and errors. But the mistakes or errors are typically because of lack of either training or good documentation on the process. So those are three of the biggies.
Yep. And all those are excellent. And what's coming to mind is when those are not on track, then people end up starting more work in progress and more multitasking. Then something they're waiting for approval gets approved. Now they go back to it. So they're context switching, which is waste.
Totally waste.
I think that multitasking, jumping between too many things started and not done, is a huge waste.
Yeah, and actually the research has been pretty consistent that you actually can't multitask two cognitive tasks. So the example I give people to try is like, go look at a TV channel that has a ticker tape along the bottom, whether it's a news station, sports, whatever, and also has people talking, commentators talking, and try to, absorb what the commentators are saying and read and absorb what the ticker tape's saying. You can't do it. Yep. You can eat and watch TV at the same time because eating is non-cognitive. But so there's really no such thing as multitasking in a workplace unless you're eating and working. You can't really do two cognitive tasks at the same time. So you are task switching or context switching, and you're losing a lot of time. And the research has shown you lose up to 20 minutes in a complex project, and actually more if it's really complex. 20 minutes, and people get interrupted 8, 9, 10 times a day. So 20 minutes times 8, 9, 10, that's a lot of waste.
Yeah. So that's what we encourage with my team in my MSPs and with the clients we coach is single piece flow, focus on it, deep focus. And if you prioritize your work, then you got to trust the system that what I'm doing is the most important. Let's finish it or get to a natural break and then on to the next.
Yeah.
Right.
And turn off all distractions so you can focus. Turn off, Slack notifications, email notifications, cell phones upside down, silent. There's time during the day to look at all that and to continue flow in that way. But if you do everything within a task switching environment, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times longer to get the work done than it would if you just focus on one thing at a time.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very huge.
Okay. So if you go into, let's say, a new client and you go to, and they've got, 50 employees, and you go talk to somebody at the bottom of the organization, just the line worker, how do you know if there's clarity in the organization? Or what's some questions you would ask, or what would you listen for? You're like, within a minute, they have the clarity or they don't.
So it's actually middle managers that I find are the most in the fog. And I think middle managers are in a very difficult position when leaders aren't hyper clear to them because they're just passing on the lack of clarity. So let's go to your question with a frontline person. So I might ask, what's the purpose of the organization? And they usually don't know at all. And because it's not part of onboarding, and so that's an opportunity there. I might say, how does the organization measure success? Like what kinds of performance metrics will say, yes, we're doing good, or oops, we're slipping a little bit here, and they sometimes don't know that. I also would ask what the priorities are. And very oftentimes I hear they change daily. That's a sign. One of the other things that's kind of it's not really what you asked, but it's tangentially related, is the role of one-on-ones. And what I'm finding more and more and more are that leaders that believe that one-on-ones are valuable and needed are still not necessarily adhering to it. And I count the number of times someone cancels or reschedules a one-on-one as a direct affront to that employee. It's disrespectful. It is sending a very clear message. Talk about clarity. The clear message is something's more important than you. That's not a good thing. And I think we have a one-on-one crisis going on in the country, in the world, probably, with leaders not sticking to their. That's a commitment, and that's a really important commitment. And when you don't stick to your commitments, people start believing you won't stick to your commitments, and that's never a good place to be. So I'm hard on leaders when it comes to one-on-ones, and everyone needs them. Employees need your undivided, focused time in order for them to grow and be engaged.
Yep. I'm a big fan of them as well. I've put them in here, but I'm taking some notes on that.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, it's really important.
so yeah, let's do the tangent on this one. Is so how do you use the one-on-ones, I guess, to create clarity with the employee, and what's your typical agenda for them?
Well, I start out with just a real open-ended question. How's it going? How are you feeling about things? What's working well? What are some areas that you could wave a magic wand and have be done differently? And that includes my behavior. It includes the work we're doing. It includes interrelationships with the other team members. I mean, it's wide open. And you have to set a really safe environment for them to feel safe answering that. And so that comes after you have a few where they say something a little tricky and you don't lose it.
Yeah.
That they begin to trust. So I usually just start with that. And then in every one-on-one, I always am asking, what's in your way of being even more successful at work? That's asking a waste question, basically. What's in your way? And it's a leader's job to navigate that and help the person navigate it and remove things. It's not only up to the employee to figure out how to get things out of the way. I mean, oftentimes they don't have the power to get things out of the way.
Hmm.
And they may not have the skill. They may not have the experience. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people it may not be truly safe for them to get some obstacle removed. And so it's important to be real about that type of thing.
Yeah, that's creating a great environment. Seen that so often that people, they may not realize they're stuck. So
Yeah.
you got to help them with that, and they don't realize their blind spots. But sometimes they think there's an issue, and they're like, "Well, that's the way it is. That's the way you want it as the boss or the manager." Is like, no,
Yeah.
let's talk about it. It can be changed. Hey, these things are fixable.
Yeah,
These
and
friction
sometimes it
points.
was what the previous boss wanted them to do, but you're not that boss. And so
Yeah.
again, back to clarity, getting, I realized with one of my employees, and this isn't true of all employees, you also have to really get to know what their learning style, what their listening style is. I have one person on the team where, I have to be very prescriptive that I only need this amount of information because he wants to please so well, so much, and that he just will give me everything else. Like, and it's really thorough, but it's not what I needed. Like I just needed one thing to make a decision or take an action. And, so there's extra time being spent doing this whole thing. So I learned that, he wasn't necessarily thinking how I was thinking. So I had to really communicate. All I need are two numbers in the body of an email. I don't need an Excel sheet. I don't need like I just need the two numbers. It'd be super helpful. Thank you so much for helping me with this. And little by little he's gotten better, but I still have to be pretty explicit after 2 years. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've been coaching my team on what we call the TLDR, the too long, don't repeat, right? That's the 4-letter acronym. So you get this big, long Slack post or email. It's like, no, what's the 2-sentence version?
Yeah, or at least put it up front and then put the
Yeah.
backstory or the
Yeah.
whatever the relevant details. What's the ask? Do you want
Yeah.
someone to make a decision? Do you want them to do something? What's the ask? Put that up front and then everything else.
Yeah. So bigger picture, obviously we both love lean, agile, these thinking, but it's very new to this MSP space. Some have heard the acronyms and they're just kind of scared of it because they're like, well, that's for software development or that's for manufacturing. And what would you say to an executive who's kind of curious about it, but it just seems like a lot? Like, well, where do you start on this journey?
The answer is always the same with me. You start where you have some pain and you've got receptivity. So in other words, you don't have to hit the ball out of the park and have a home run on the very first improvement effort. You can take something smaller and start building, improvement muscles on smaller work that maybe is less significant, but yet it's not only about the results. It's about building the skill set and the capabilities to achieve those results. And so you don't want to overdo it right away. so choosing wisely on where you start, but the point is to just start. I have this client right now where they just keep debating which direction they want to go in with a gap that they're trying to close. And I was there on site a couple weeks ago, and I said, I I don't always say this, but for you guys, where you're at, I say just start. Just if you want to put them all these little ideas on a piece of paper and pull one out of a hat, like whatever it takes, do it. Like just start, because you're going to learn so much about the organization. And every one improvement that you make, if it's done with thought and purposefully, is a great teacher of the culture. And the more you do improvement, the more gaps you see. So it's like success begets success, but gaps beget gaps. So there's just always something more to work on. But sometimes you just have to start.
Start, yeah. And just it's habit stacking. Like
I like
it's
that.
not continuing to the next one. You're going to keep the existing things you've already done alive in the organization.
That's fun. I like that, habit
Right.
stacking.
Yeah.
Is that from a book? Is that from one of the books behind you?
Not one of these books, but I guess Atomic Habits is a popular one on habits, which I haven't read, but I'm probably doing a lot of it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do a lot with that. Like I got apps on my phone for tracking habits, and
Fun.
I think that's behavior change is what we're doing every day.
Becoming
Right?
aware is the first way to change a habit of any sort.
Yeah.
Becoming aware.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been working on that from the time I wake up on time, no snoozing, right? And all the way until my head's back on the pillow is what are the habits, the routines.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it takes a while to stack it and build it.
Yeah, and you just triggered something else back to the beginning of our conversation about clarity and what leaders can do. I think the other thing that's important is if these companies are the right size, your audience are the right size to be able to get pretty aligned pretty quickly on something, anything. And so let's say it's clarity, and the organization's like, yeah, this is a good thing. We need to get more clear, and it's clarity is not going to kill people, so let's do it. And so they make that decision. Well, back to forming habits, you don't always see what you're doing to either propel a habit to get it more, wired into and the neural pathways developed, or not, and going the opposite direction. So if you get everyone safe, calling everyone on not having clarity, I'm not clear on that. Can you help me out? I'm not clear on that. I don't think we're clear yet. Like if you could just have it become part of the language in a very big way, it's much more likely that you're going to evolve more quickly into a clarity seeking and clarity providing machine.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you some like quick questions here, and I think that kind of answers that one I had. Hey, what one phrase you can use to yank a meeting back on track? And that's back. Like, why are we meeting? What's where we got? Let's get clear on the purpose of this conversation, right?
Well, yeah, the purpose of an email conversation and meeting. So, meeting agendae, is that the plural? Agendae is so critical because you can use that to bring people back really quickly. In the improvement space, we use charters a lot, and they're just saviors in getting the conversation back on track, because it's like, wait, is that, are we on focus here? This is our focus. Are we on focus? Is that going to get us here? Those kinds of questions. So having a framing and shaping tool can be really helpful for getting those conversations back on track.
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot with journaling prompts as well in the evening, looking at my meetings tomorrow and gets that clarity on each thing I'm doing tomorrow. And in the morning, revisit that, refine it a little bit more clear, right? And that's been really helpful.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. And let me see. We've covered a lot here. Yeah, I'd like you to share a bit more about your work. And obviously you're doing the coaching, consulting, speaking, but you also got the academy. So like, who's a good fit for the academy?
Anyone that wants to learn about how to change an organization into a very continuous improvement focused organization and get the operation to be a well-oiled machine and humming along. Anyone. I mean, we have some courses that are a little more leaning toward front lines and people more junior in an organization, some that are more for leaders that are senior in the organization, and everything in between. So it's process design, management practices, leadership practices, analytical methods like root cause analysis tools and things like that. So it's everything in the spirit of improving organizational performance and doing it in a way where people are deeply fulfilled and there's a lot of joy in the work. On the leadership side, I'll say, help leaders sleep at night. And on the front lines, having people, it's just like really, really joyful to get up in the morning and come to work.
Yeah. That's the book I've got right behind me. It's called I Love It Here. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Oh, that's nice. No, I haven't heard it. The Lean CEO right above you. I know Jacob Stoller really well. He's a good guy.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic book. Yeah, I love it here. How great leaders create organizations that people never want to leave.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Who's the author?
Clint Pulver.
Nice.
Yeah. And he goes into organizations and like big ones, like big retail organizations, and you talk to people on the floor and just pulling them. And organizations learn that people, they're being told by an employee, yeah, I'm going to stay here, but really they're all looking for jobs. Right? What's the real truth?
Yeah.
And they're showing up and they're smiling, but they're not happy. Right.
Yeah, as soon as the next thing comes along that looks better, they'll jump.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And where can listeners connect and explore your work further?
Sure. So my company name used to be the Karen Martin Group, and we decided to make it more not Karen Martin centric when I moved to Dallas. So it's TKMG.com is the consulting, speaking, authoring side of things. And then TKMG Academy is our academy, but you can also get to them from each of the sites. So TKMG. And then LinkedIn, I'm Karen Martin OpEx.
Okay. Yeah. And so for anyone kind of drowning or in this fog around the work and not unclear on priorities and process, we help there as well, of course, is with Top Left, the product and the coaching there as well. So you can book a diagnostic call with us and happy to help there. So you can schedule that on the website at topleft.team. And again, I'm Wim Kirchhoff, and this was the Agile MSP podcast.
Thank you.